The reason it's not a problem for me is because I start with the hero. It is all about the hero for me. In fact, if you look at my books, I think some developmental editors said start with the heroine's point of view. I never start with the heroine's point of view, ever. I don't think I ever have. I start with the hero. He's it for me. And I'm not saying the heroine's not important. And I write independent women, but the hero is kind of the guy for me. So once I get him and I'm excited about him, the rest kind of falls into place. It's that person.
Welcome to Raising Baby Authors. I'm Cassia, your host and a brand new writer. If you feel overwhelmed and lost about this whole writing thing, you're certainly not alone. Join me while I pester my author guests for writing advice and find out how they do it. Because if they could, then why not you? It truly takes a village to raise an author, so let me share my village with you. Hello, dear listener, and welcome back to the classroom. Thank you so much for giving me your time and attention. And let me introduce the next mentor. I am so excited to introduce this author to you, and I'm not even sure she needs introduction, but please welcome best-selling historical romance author Tracy Sumner. Hi, Tracy.
Hi. Hey, how are you? How are
I'm
you in
good.
Belgium?
Good. There's no sun, but we make do
Ah,
with vitamin D.
yeah. When I was just in, we were talking before, so we started in Bruges this summer. People were wearing puffers in July in Bruges. Now I know that's puffers, like the kind of puffy jacket coat that we wear in the winter here, like, the down coats. So it was the coldest I've ever been in July in my life. Although I
I
think that was unusual, but wow,
I have no problem believing you. Honestly, here you
it
never
was great.
know. You never know. You can have four seasons in one day, and it's just yeah,
It was
it's
great.
been interesting. But also, people in Belgium can dress in very heavy jackets and shorts at the same time. So I'm never surprised to see anything.
It was crazy. Little ski hats in July. Yes, hi, I'm in New York. I'm Tracy Sumner. I am a historical romance author for quite a bit of a few years. I write pretty, I guess, steamy novels with I like to say, I guess some of the call outs for me are the banter and the heroes, and we can talk more about that. I have a big focus on the heroes. I sort of like almost a small town feel, even if it's London or anything like that. I kind of write in tight with those characters. I'm sort of a character driven writer, I think. And I have a few different series. I started a long time ago in traditional publishing with Kensington, and those at that time, American historicals were kind of in. So I started with that and then sort of moved into Regency. And I also have this little romantasy passion project, but more to come.
Wow. Wow, that's a lot of stuff. That's amazing. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me. I love
Oh,
your
no, thank
books.
you.
And I have like a million questions to you, but I think maybe the best would be to start just as a little warm up with the questions that my listeners asked. So let's try to
That's
go through
great.
these.
Let's do it.
First of all, I've got my friend Allison who wanted to ask you. Okay, let me give you some context for the listeners. So, the book that is right behind me, Three Sins
Yes,
and a Scoundrel,
it.
is just came out, right? Just like very recently.
2 weeks, maybe.
Yes,
Yeah,
2 weeks
2 weeks.
ago. And it's the last book in your Duchess Society series, right?
Yes.
And so a lot of people I know are big fans of the series and of your books in general. And so Alison was asking, how do you feel about wrapping up the series?
Uh, well, I'll tell you, I think once you kind of get involved with these characters, and they become like real people to me. I always talk about them like they're real, and then I tell people I know they're not real, but so I feel great about it, and then I also feel torn because I want to stay in that world, and I've kind of created it, and that makes it easy as a writer when you're starting and you're stepping in, but it also makes it harder because there are little details like if I write Brazen Blue Stocking as Tobias Streeter and Hildy, I am in with them. I know them. But then 3 books later, I'm writing about them. I've lost some touch. And so sometimes when you're writing about characters that are not the main ones, you've lost a little of that feel for them. And I don't want to, so it gets harder when you've got this whole world that you've created. Like fantasy writers, God love them, because I don't think I'm a world builder. Even my little romantasy series, I tried, but that's a really tough thing. So I feel sad, but I also feel kind of like excited about a little bit of a fresh start.
All
So
right.
although I mentioned Dorsey at the end of and he kind of had a Macaulay, Xander Macaulay feeling for me. Like he sort of stepped off the page a little bit. So my easy way of doing this may be to have a series with him and have very, very light cameos with these guys still. Maybe just mentions more than the cameos they've had in the Duchess books.
Yeah, that sounds great actually. As a you kind of
Yeah.
when you want to leave the world but also don't want to leave the world. So yeah, that's okay. She actually had two more questions for you.
Oh
So
no, you shoot, shoot.
I think, again, like a piece of context is that I believe Dutch Society is your most popular series, right? It's the Brazen
Yes.
Blue Stocking is the one that appears first on Goodreads. So it has most of the reviews and ratings. And so she's asking, does the success of the Duchess Society series influence your writing at any point? Do you feel more pressure or overwhelmed or anything like that?
Yes and no. I think that one thing that maybe differentiates me from some of the other writers you talk to in historical romance, I don't know, but because I think you and I were talking about it a little bit, or and at the beginning, since I started in traditional publishing, when things were so different and there were no ebooks, I mean, it was really a different thing. And you had an editor and your agent, and you had those gatekeepers. And um, I think this rebirth and revitalization of like my career and being able to do this, I feel like pressure, yes, because the Duchess Society has done well, but I also feel like it's kind of me having paid my dues. Like I've been out there and I've written, and it's not like I've written so much because I wrote for the Kensington books and then I took many years off. I had a corporate career. I was a graphic designer in financial services and in marketing. And so I sort of put that aside and now I'm kind of coming back to it. So the Duchess stuff feels good to me because I think I'm following advice that I had gotten when I was younger that I did not, because I published in my 20s. That's why I publish under my real name. I just went full steam ahead. I sold my first book to Kensington, which is pretty unusual to sell your first book and all of that. And I was very immature and I didn't make the best steps. Didn't make the best decisions, I think, with the writing career and writing stuff. So now coming back to this, that Duchess is sort of catching on. I feel pretty good about it because I feel like I'm sort of doing what people told me, which is just write. Just write the books. Write what you have a passion for, which I do. Um, and that's going to come. So I think it's kind of good. It's been good karma and good kismet or whatever. And hard work it is. It's a lot harder than I've worked in corporate for sure. For sure. But no, I feel, but of course, then when sometimes I'll read something or somebody has an expectation for the books or for a character, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, yeah, I was really nervous about this last book, to be honest.
I'm still to get to it, but I've seen lots of reviews from my friends and from other people, and it seems like the series was wrapped up in a great way.
Oh, yeah, I hope so. I feel kind of like that too. It took me a long time to write. It was just personal stuff, and I've got a teenager, and we're trying to talk to him about college and all life, And it took me so long, and I kind of got burned out the end of last year. And so Three Sins took me a longer time to write than normal, and I just felt like it was disjointed or that I couldn't, I had to get into it and re-get into it, and so I wasn't sure. And I really did not want to leave Jasper and CC like on this bad plane. Like if you have a series, I just could hear it in my head. Oh, it was pretty good, but it's not, it's the weakest in the series. And if you're
Oh,
going to do a weak one, at least have it embedded in like the middle. I didn't want it to be the last one, you know? So I think it's okay. So I think
yeah,
we're okay.
I can, like, it's not like I've done this before, but I think I can understand the pressure that goes into the last book in the series. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Well,
So,
the last question from Allison. Uh, Her handle is Books, Plants, and Tea. By the way, I sometimes
oh,
forget
yes.
to
Oh, yes.
to
I know her. Yep. Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I sometimes
You got to go
forget
by the
to name the
handles because we
handles.
can't get the names. Yes. I
I
totally
know. It's
agree.
just, yeah, I see the
Yep.
name, but then I forget. Well, her last question was actually to Xander. Well, as he called him, as she called him, meddling matchmaker number one. What do I need? What does she need to do to get herself a husband?
Well, Xander McCauley would definitely have, he would have some answers. Uh, I think, oh gosh, that's a hard one. I think you have to expect, and I'm kind of sounding like a feminist here, but I think you have to expect the best, hold that standard. While also, I'm listening to Barbara Streisand's autobiography right now. And she said when she met James Brolin, who she's been with for like 30 years or something, and she said she had to love herself first. And that was the key to meeting the person who
Mhm.
was right. So I think you love yourself first. And I think women don't do that. And we're out and we're so young and we're like consumed with what he wants, what but I think it needs to be what you want. So tell her you could make that perfect circle of happiness and then I think it comes.
Yeah,
So
and I think Xander would say something like that as well. You would just be like there on the lookout for every non-deserving guy and just send him away, send him away.
yes, and send him away because he is the protector of the group, kind of. He is, and he did this in Three Sins too. He's kind of got that thing going on. He's very protective of not only, and this is what I liked about Three Sins that kind of rolled out, is that it's not the women he's protective of in this one, it's the men. And I liked that. And Jasper was trying, and I really didn't almost know this until I did a reread myself, like when I'm editing, that Jasper at the beginning, very beginning, he wants that group of men more than he wants a woman. He wants their friendship. If you go like that first scene where he's saying he's changing himself or whatever for the men, not the women. So maybe it's the same thing for finding yourself and being happy with that first. I don't know.
I like that. Okay.
So,
All right. So we have another question from Bookish Helen.
oh, yes. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
she's asking if more of the Leighton cluster offspring get their own books in the future. And so far, we have Tobias's son and Xander's daughter, right?
Yes. And that one would just kind of came out of nowhere. Wolf wanted to do a Christmas anthology. And if I write about them as children, they always stick with me. Like Josiah and I think in Three Sins would be a great one. So yeah, I could see that completely happening. And that would be a nice way, maybe with novellas, to be able to add to the series in the future. Once I've had a little breather and it's set and solid and everything is good, yes, I could see definitely adding a couple, but I might do a novella. So it's sort of, you know what I mean? I'm not spinning out these huge novels when I've kind of got those six. And then I have, I think, three novellas in the series too. So I could see maybe doing that. Yeah, and they've got
Okay.
lots of children, that group. So
Okay. So actually, you started talking about novellas already, so we can continue with the next question from Reading in Brussels, my friend as
yes,
well.
yes,
And yeah, I think you've seen the question already, but basically, she
I
was
did.
asking about novellas and how you manage to pack so much story and character development in a what is basically half a book.
I've been thinking about this question. I mentioned to her that I was going to think about it on Instagram. And what I've sort of thought to myself, and I don't really know because, I don't have this big, I have a process when I write. Everybody has their own process. But I'm not a fly by the seat of my pants, but I'm not a total plotter either. I'm sort of in the middle. But I think with the novella, when I was thinking about it, how that goes, and I do think I write a fairly mean novella. Like I think I do have a fairly, complete arc and whatever, even for limitation, in space. And reviewers will always say, "Oh, I liked it, but I wish it was longer." We get that all the time, even when it's fully stated, it's a shorter book. But I think what it is that I go into it with the same thoughts about the character that I do about a novel. I just don't have as many scenes. So I think I really like I mean I'm not saying I don't move it faster and there's maybe a little insta love or you've got them kind of moving faster, the pace is faster, but I don't think I sacrifice any of the basics or the connections and the banter or whatever's going to happen. I think I just pull out a few scenes that are in the novels. So I think the novellas feel more complete. And that it is harder to write. It's harder to write the shorters, and I think it's harder to write sometimes the longers.
Yeah,
So
I guess maybe some subplots get sacrificed or something like that. So you don't just
of
like go
course.
branch out a lot. You just try to stay and focus on the same couple in all the scenes. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. Nora Roberts used to say, well, she said years ago, and I absolutely got it exactly when what she said, and this is 20 years ago. I mean, probably. She said that she used to write her characters in and you may not get what this is, but a telephone booth. But we used to have the telephone booths, before cell phones. Like
I'm over
Superman would get
30. I know what telephone booths are.
Okay. I didn't know exactly because now that's like so old school. And she said that she actually was excited about moving the characters out of the telephone booth. And that's with her more, romantic suspense and all the stuff. But I loved her books like Chesapeake series. Oh my God. Like that when they are in the telephone booth and it's a lot of writing and the characters are just together, that to me is amazing. So I prefer reading those books and I prefer writing those books, and that's the character driven. So I think those novellas are like those characters are in a telephone booth, and you won't have necessarily a lot of those subplots spinning, but you can still make it really complete. You just have to, you have to make it complete.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And you're actually very nicely segued me into the next questions. My friend Pamela Reeds, she ran your appreciation week.
Oh, yes, yes. I'm talking
Yes.
to her. She's in Japan right now.
Oh, nice. Amazing. She had a long question, so I'm just going to read from my phone. One of your hugest strengths is writing from the perspective of each character. Every character is distinct and feels different regardless of the book. So, how do you decide on the character's personality and really stick with it throughout the book?
Okay. If I lose my train of thought, tell me. So,
Okay.
one thing that I do with my characters, one thing that I like to do, and it's for me and it's for them, and it also is like a little bit of research, and I love it. Like, I'll take One Wedding and an Earl, Ollie. So, and I did it in Chasing the Duke. Oh my gosh, I did it in Scandals, Vixen, whatever. Like, they're geologists or they're stargazers. There's something they're interested in, like with Jasper, it's the spy thing and whatever, but he's also interested in trade and kind of, but I always give them a passion, and the heroines especially too, which may be a little bit outside what they could have really truly done at that time, but that's the fantasy element, right? I give them a passion that's outside of their their passion. um okay, get me back to what she said, like,
Yeah, she was just
because I'm
asking, so when you decide on a character's personality, how do you define it and how do you stick to it throughout the whole book?
Okay, so when I have that passion that they have outside the passion, so that's the first piece. And then staying with the personality when you're writing, and I think most authors I can say this happens. One thing that's really cool and amazing, you don't have everything decided. Like you start with this character and you think you know who they are and you give them these things. And so when I give them this thing that they're passionate about besides the person, I don't want it to just be the passion for the people and that's it. That's one dimensional character. But once you start writing, they tell you things on the page. They do. I mean, it's crazy. You'll start writing and something will happen and you're like, wow, I had no idea that was going to happen. It happens every book. So I think my having that passion for them at the beginning with all these things that happen as they interact, it helps to keep that personality there, um, intact the whole way, if that makes sense. Because I kind of know who they are at the beginning, and then with the changes, because they have to have this arc, and maybe the heroine doesn't change as much as the hero. I don't know. We read for that hero that really changes, but I think if you know them at the beginning, that's how I kind of keep them on track. Um, and if I have a book that's a harder write, like with Jasper's, I'm pointing, um, it is because I feel like I sometimes lose them when I'm writing. Do you know what I mean? Cece and Jasper, like I felt like at times, and that was probably because it took me kind of a long time to write that one, that I felt like I might be losing that piece. So I
Mhm.
think it's creating not just this guy who's going to like this girl and she's forbidden or whatever, but to really create this person and these two people that have all this other backstory. And that keeps them true to
Okay.
themselves.
Yeah, I think I understand. It seems like you have some sort of anchor for them or something that can go through the whole story like a string, so you don't go too far in like different directions and don't make them completely crazy doing very opposite things. So, and another thing that you said was very, I think, kind of freeing for me because you said you don't know everything about them in the beginning.
No.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I'm trying now, for example, to outline a novel, and I constantly battle with my own mind because I don't know how some things are going to play out, or I don't know what this character would think in this particular situation, and it annoys me so much that I don't know. And now I think that maybe I should let it go, and just while I'm writing, it might.
Yes. Because you can't now, you have to do everybody's process has to be what their process is, but you cannot necessarily prescribe all of that before you've written a page or before you've written a chapter or something, what's going to happen in chapter 6 or 7. Now, if you are the kind of writer that has to have all of that down, but if you're not, just write, because I'm telling you, when the characters start talking to each other, things happen as long as you feel like you know them. I think because there's a thing like, and I love reading craft about writing too. You like, I'll take a character of mine, Tides of Love, Noah Garrett. He's like, he's one of my favorite heroes. I know he gets bashed a little bit because I think he might be neurodivergent, to use the word now. I had a psychologist who read it and told me, and I thought, you're probably right because he is very, there's a thing. And he's a marine biologist. And I did all this research, and I grew up on the South Carolina coast, so it's very true to life, that series. And that he thinks in the way that a marine biologist would think, and he's brilliant, and he thinks in that way, and so it's very structured. But the way he handles romance and the way he handles love is that way, and the way he talks. So you want your character, if they are rough, to sound kind of rough, or if they're very interested in like chasing Duke. He's interested in rocks, so he puts everything. I think I even did it in Three Sins. What was it? Markham is saying something like he makes a deal with Jasper based on a rock. That's something that would be passion for him, but everyone else thinks it's stupid. So when you're writing, yeah, give yourself that freedom, because if you're feeling that like twinge, maybe it's just time to put it on the page and see where it goes.
All right. Yeah. I'm gonna have that in mind. I'm just being stubborn with myself because I feel like I don't have enough time. I want to do it as fast as possible and I don't want to do a lot of rewrites, and that's why I'm trying to plan everything ahead. But my brain kind of fighting me basically. Yeah, I have a finished first draft which is I'm not editing at the moment because I'm too emotionally attached to that book and I want to be
Yep.
better. I want to be better before I edit it. But I have another one that I'm outlining now that I do actually want to publish. So you'd say second, but maybe like first.
Well, you've heard all the advice. You don't need it, but the more you write, the better you get. That sounds so trite, but it's not even that. It's not the craft. You get better or more comfortable in your process. So I do it, and I can tell you, I probably do it the same damn way that I did it 20 years ago when I was writing for Kensington. I mean, I really think my process is so similar that it would shock even me. And I will read a passage from back then in one of the books, and I'll think, oh, I should have done this. And I read the next paragraph, and it's there, and I can't even remember it. So, I think you'll get more comfortable with what is your process and you'll figure that out. Forget about craft. I mean, that's probably down or it is. Maybe you'll tighten up your pacing or whatever, but you get to where you're comfortable with your process.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. I still do have a couple of questions, but I think we can like
Yeah, you
we
go.
weave them in. We can weave them in into the conversation because I think we've touched already a little bit on how you started, but I actually want to go even like more back. I just wanted to ask you basically how you started writing and how long did it take you to get a publisher and stuff like that.
I started writing in high school. I'm not exactly sure, but it was probably about the time I was reading The Outsiders. And I kind of, if I like a writer, I read everything. So I read everything S.E. Hinton wrote. Was reading from a pretty young age, sixth, seventh grade, Stephen King. I was very into The Chosen, who's a Jewish writer that I really liked, and the book is cool. And I read everything he wrote in high school, which is pretty atypical, I think, for that writer. So I was not reading romance. The reason that I remember my first romance is because I was anti-romance pretty much, just in that kind of way that you think, oh, it's a bodice ripper or whatever. And so in high school, I started writing, just futzing around, but I did have this old typewriter of my dad's that I drug out of the typewriter, yes, out of the attic, but it was cool and I liked the sound of it. And I'd had a couple of manuscripts, but they weren't full or complete, and it was just noodling around. So I went to college and I majored in journalism, but I wasn't really in journalism for writing. I was in journalism under advertising and public relations. So it was wasn't editorial. And so during college, I was at the beach. I was 19 and I didn't have a book. And so we went to this used bookstore and for some reason, I have no idea why I did it because I didn't read this stuff and the cover's atrocious. And it wasn't a clinch cover, and I love those. It was just this yucky candy box cover. Lavrel Spencer Vows. And actually, I'm thinking in my readers group about doing a read through with that book for some people. So I'll tell you if we're going to do it. Just like a week where everybody reads it and they chime in because it's an older book. You got to give it some kudos for that because the heroes were a little more, alpha sometimes. Not that this guy is, but I was floored. Like I can remember literally not being able to put that book down in a way that I had just almost never had before. And that was it. I mean, I went full steam into reading thousands of romance novels in undergrad and grad. And so when I got out of grad school, I was kind of like, and I moved to Chicago, and I was sort of like, I think I can write one of these. It was pretty much that's all I thought. And I had written some before, so I kind of wanted to do it. And then it took me a few years just between jobs, and you're not being serious about it, and you think, oh, this is just a thing. And so I wrote, and I finally ended up with this manuscript. And I wrote part of it when I lived in Europe too. Part of it was in when I was in Paris, and part was in Taipei. I was teaching English in Taipei. Anyway, and it took me years to write it, a few years, and I was still in my 20s, and I didn't even know Romance Writers of America existed. Zero idea. So I'm telling you, I wrote this. It's called To Seduce a Rogue right now. It used to be Carolina Rose. Anyway, ooh, I think I have a. Hold on. Yeah, I think there's one back there. Oh yes. Oh my God,
Oh my
that
god, it's so
puppy.
beautiful. It's so
Yeah, this
beautiful.
is Mike Dale, who Courtney McCaskill. You got to interview her. She's a hoot. If you don't, because she knows covers, and she's like, "Oh my God, that's Mike Dale." I'm like, "What?" This was like a year ago. But anyway, yeah, Kensington did the covers. So I had this book, and I found Romance Writers of America, and I went to a conference, and at that time, you met with an editor, and they gave you a business card. I mean, this is how old school it was. And when you submitted your manuscript mailed, this big fat thing. You had to put that business card in there, and on the outside of the envelope, you put requested material. And that meant you were going to get a faster read. And in New York at that time, if you've ever seen the old doors with a window over the top, like the door, and then there's an open window that opens over the top. Well, that's called the transom. And it used to be that people delivering manuscripts would throw the manuscript over that through that window into the editor's office, and they would land on the floor. And so
Wow.
that was called submitting over the transom. So literally I submitted over the transom to this editor. She had been in the business. She'd worked with Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis at Bantam or whatever. She was not a big romance person, and it was later in her career, which was kind of later to my detriment. And she didn't love romance, but she was a character, and she was very known in the industry. And she had a reader who read the book, and the reader loved it. And she called me and she said, "My reader is tougher than me," because they can't read everything. They have to have assistants to help. And so they bought that one and a couple. I think they did like a $2 or $3 deal. And that's where I go back to what I was saying at the beginning. I was just so young and so dumb about the business. And I just, about sticking to what you like to write and sticking and not worrying about trends, and everything got in my head and it was so crazy. But so I had an agent at that time. I had a couple and navigating through, but this editor at Kensington ended up sort of being let go because it was at the end of her tenure working. She was older. But when that happens, you don't have a spot at the publisher anymore. Your editor's gone. It's called being orphaned. And I was orphaned with a bunch of writers. I mean, it wasn't, and then they have to fit you into a spot, but another editor has to know you and know your writing if they don't. And so I could have probably made that work, but I was in New York then too, and I had this other career, and I was kind of like, so I just sort of let it fall by the wayside for a few years. Until I had a
Okay.
breast cancer diagnosis in 2017, and more than you want to know, maybe. And kind of my cancer joke is coming up. I thought, well, I've got this Tides of Love and Tides of Passion, and I really wanted to write The Third Brother, even though I only did a novella for him. And I was like, why not just do that? I'm like, publishing isn't as bad as cancer. So, boom. Anyway, so that was, and then, yeah, I know it's bad. You can cut that out if you want. So then
Never.
I also,
No.
the League of Lords series, that Lady Is Trouble. That's a really cool little series. It's nothing like it out there, unless you go back to Jane Ann Krentz Arcane series many, many, many years ago, maybe a little. Anyway, and I just started with those, and then that got me back into writing again. And then the Duchess stuff. And I did some other stuff, Chasing the Duke and some of the other little, and Ice Duchess. I did all these novellas for sets because other authors ask you to be in sets. And so one of them was the Ice Duchess, and that Duchess Society just kind of was sticking. And when Wolf wanted me to do a series, Bree Wolf's sister was my PA. And so they were going to start this publishing company, and I was kind of a starting author for them. And it was kismet. It was good for both of us. And so that's where we are. So
Okay. But then from like between the time that you stopped and then the time that you restarted again, did you go to the same publisher with like with the new phase, or did you have to search again? Maybe I missed it.
no, and because in that time that I stopped, the industry changed like like lava melting. I mean, it went from where the books were, only hard, these guys, and they were in Walmart and and they were in Walmart because I used to do signings and Barnes and Noble. And then literally when they wanted to send the book back, they rip off the cover, toss the book, and they would send the publisher back the covers. Now that may still happen. I have no idea, but that was industry. They would get a bunch of covers and they would then refund based on that. Crazy. So we would have a book on the
Okay.
shelf for, say, 6 weeks or so, unless you were Nora Roberts or Stephen King or somebody that they would actually put your backlist up there. So you had a very tight release day, was incredible. Like now it's so different, but then it was really a lot of pressure because you only had the books out for 6 weeks or so. So anyway, yes, when I went back into publishing, the self-publishing or just indie or being able to kind of do it I did tool around with an agent again and try to think about that, but it's so much time beyond you working with an agent, them submitting. It's a year sometimes before you even hear anything, much less if it's a rejection or it's moving on to another editor. And so I think with, especially after the cancer stuff, I just kind of needed to do it, and not have that whole thing, that traditional thing, which I'd already done. And I'm not saying I would never do it again, but I just needed to get the books out and do covers. And so what for me at that time, 2017, really more 2018, 2019, 2020, was learning how to do this again. Because
Mhm.
as you know, and as you will see if you're going that route, it's a lot to learn and the industry changes every day. So I was not only writing, I was learning and meeting people and joining sets with other authors and just learning how to network again. And that just, I can't even tell you, it doesn't look like what I did before because we didn't have that. We didn't have any
Okay.
social media. We had you put a book out and you had a little website, of course, and you did bookmarks and you went to some signings. That was it.
So this is the piece that I was missing because I maybe didn't hear that you did self-publish when you restarted, which yeah, that actually sounds amazing. I know a lot of authors who went from self-publishing to trad, which eventually happened to you as well. But someone who would do trad and then decide to self-publish after that's interesting.
Well,
Okay.
some big writers, are I think Eloisa James has a book out right now, and I think her series is self-published.
Oh,
I don't
I
see, I
mean,
don't, I
I
don't,
follow her and I love her books, but I actually never wondered whether she does it herself or she has
yeah,
a
no,
publisher.
readers don't care. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I don't know that it's attached to Avon. It might be, but a lot of writers are doing that. I think it depends on what your contract is with your publisher. Um, and what's happening, but I think the mix. I mean, I've done the small publishers, Wolf, Dragon Blade. I've done a lot of collaborations with other writers. I've done my indie stuff, the League of Lords, Chasing the Duke. A lot of that stuff is my own, and I mean, each is a pro and con. There's a
Mhm.
pro and con to each.
Okay.
So
I think one more question that I wanted to ask about how you started is so your first book you said was had the name Carolina Rose, right? And so that was also a
I did not come up
historical.
with that.
That was also historical, right? But in America.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
at that time, the big American historicals were really big. Pamela Morrissey, Susan Wiggs, a lot of writers back then, Nora Roberts, tons of them. A
Hmm.
lot of American historicals. Laverell Spencer, who was my first one, that was Laverell Spencer Vows was my first that I told you.
Okay.
So American historicals were bigger. I was writing on the coast, which my editor liked because she said she didn't have anyone writing in that setting and it's very integral to those three brothers. And I did all this history and shipwrecks and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, so I started with American, and then when I went back to when I started writing again, I had always wanted to do what I called the lords and ladies. So I that's how I kind of slipped into Regency. So or
Okay.
Victorian. Actually, League of Lords is Victorian. So
So you mostly do historicals. Some of them are with some fantasy setting. There's so much research that goes into historicals. And did you study it, or did you have just to do like research from scratch for those?
well, I mean, I have written a contemporary, and sometime I might actually put it out just for fun, although it's set in the 1990s. So I'm hearing that that's actually officially a historical,
Oh
which is,
no.
yeah, I love that. That cracks me up. But yeah, I think because I started with historical romance and that's my passion, although I do read contemporaries and I'm not never say never about writing those at all. But I think it's because I started with that and that's what I love the most. But yeah, the research is a bit, and I think part of it is reading so many. If you read 1,000 of them, you sort of get a feel for that time or how we're presenting that time. I mean,
Yes.
it's not the ballrooms and the carriages and the fountains and all the stuff that we do. So, but I do research, but a lot of my research is based on kind of that passion that the character has. If they're a
Ah,
geologist, I dig deep. I mean, I kind of, and I have had a geologist with Chasing the Duke, and it might have been also in Scandalous Vixen, I think. And a geologist sent me a note about one of them, and she's like, "You really got the details right." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, thank you!" Like, yikes. So yeah, so
okay.
that, but I think you have to do research, and you just plug little things in there, like you're doing research about in London in the 1820s, and you read about a particular jeweler, and then you pop that in there,
Okay.
just kind of
You
things.
actually make it sound doable because like I read tons of historical romance. I really love it. It's my favorite subgenre. I would love to be able to write one, but just thinking about the amount of research that needs to be done, and well, I mean in my case it's also the English, but yeah. Uh just kind of paralyzes my thoughts. I'm like, no, I'm not able to do this. Never. Like I would have to read the whole, I don't know, history of England, starting here and finishing there, just to be able to think about it.
Well, I used to think that, like, I remember my first book, that first one I wrote, Carolina Rose. I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to say something that is not, real," and it didn't happen. But honestly, a lot of stuff is the same. They used forks, they used spoons. A lot of it is the same. Once you got a feel for the clothing or the setting, maybe you use a few terms instead of saying this, you say this, and you look at, and I will be writing and I'll highlight something in bold in my manuscript. And I'm like, ugh, is that something? And I do get tags occasionally when I'm being proofread that they say something like, this wasn't a thing for 100 years more, or it wasn't a thing for 20 years. If it's 20, I might go with it. And then I might even put a note to readers. Sometimes you'll see that. Like I think in Chasing the Duke, I use a Christmas tree. And it's a few years before that was really a thing, because that was the 1840s with Queen Victoria. And so, but it's really not, once you start writing them and you get a feel for it, it's not. I think my language is different. I feel like it's a little more formal for historical than it would be for a contemporary. A little.
Yeah, for sure. Like I really highlight like half of the book when I'm reading something of yours, but and I really love it. But what I'm thinking is that there's no way I could have constructed that sentence. Like it's way too complicated for me.
Well, do you read Tessa Dare? Do you ever read Tessa Dare?
I have Tessa Dare, but I think I don't know. I want to read it and don't want to read it at the same time. I know it's gonna be amazing, and I'm like postponing it until I in the mood.
Well, everyone has a different writers they love, but Tessa Dare sticks in my mind as I when I read her, there's not that many writers that I read that I think, oh, I just can't do this. Like intimidated almost. Like I love it. But she has a pretty, I think, this is my personal opinion. I'm not saying I've ever read it, that she has a pretty modern sensibility for historical. And I think maybe I do a little bit too. I'm not Georgette Heyer. So if a reader wants that very, very, very historical, maybe they're going a little bit more to, I mean, I try not to keep this modern language and stuff, but I think Tessa Dare is pretty, hers seem kind of, they're historical, but they're definitely got that. And I love it. So don't be intimidated if you ever want to try.
Yeah, I've heard actually Tessa Dare to be recommended as for someone who only reads contemporaries and want to start with historicals. It's a good starting point.
I can see that segue completely.
Yeah, yeah.
Completely. Yes.
You did
Cool.
mention that you have a process that is kind of perfected, more or less. Like you do kind of the same things, but can you tell me how your first draft looks like? How are you plotting? Or well, you also mentioned a little bit of that, but like let's expand.
Okay, so what I do, and I'm telling you, I think this is very similar to what I did years ago. Like I have a file, Word file, it's no big deal. I'm low tech. I think it's easier if you do it almost like the lowest tech you can. You get too much involved. I think that becomes part of it that you don't want it to be. But so I do a Word file, and when I'm starting a book, or say a book is in the future, but pretty soon in the future, I keep a file. And when I read something that is inspiring to me, because I do the same thing you do, I make notes in my Kindle. And it's the way a person uses, like I just read Judith Ivory. I don't know if you've ever read her. Um, but she's an older, she's retired now, but she wrote for Avon, and she didn't write a ton of books, but she's fabulous. But it's of that style 20 years ago, kind of overwritten, and there's a long, it's a little longer. We used to spend more time on setting and furnishings and what they're wearing, but she's fabulous. And I mean, you got to read her. And I just read one of hers, and I definitely, if I'm inspired by somebody, I have 20 tags on a book or maybe more. And I'll like highlight a word that they use or something. And I'm like, and when it gets you in the belly and you think, okay, so I will take like these little bits. And sometimes I'll even type the entire bit, which makes me feel like, okay, I feel like that's a good writing muscle. And I'll put it in that Word document. And I know and I'll put it in the scene. So I do just a scene thing. It might be like, I don't know, almost a script writing thing, but I'll do like first scene where they meet and then this scene, and I put that in bold, and then I just put whatever in that scene, and it is a mishmash. I always look at it and think shit, but it's maybe a line of dialogue. It may be a nickname. It may be make sure here you mention something about that character that she's going to think about him or whatever. It's whatever of that scene. And so I have different scenes in this Word document. One is a love scene. First kiss is always one, just that things I want them to do or say or think. So once I have that, once I start writing what I do, and this is maybe weird, but it's my way. So I have another Word document. I don't like to write anything weird. And I actually, for that scene, I pull out those notes, and it's in another font at the end of the scene. So I'm writing and constantly referring to it and pulling it out or saying, no, this is too soon, or it doesn't fit the book anymore at all. And I organize those notes before I start writing that scene, kind of in order of where it would happen. And sometimes it's even the way I want to close a scene. It's just, or it may be almost no notes, or it may be 2 pages. So, which is always I'm like, oh gosh, that's a lot. So I write using those notes in the scene. And then what I do, and this may be helpful for you because you said you would rather have a clean first draft. I do not write stream of consciousness. That is not me. I write, I write, and sometimes I do find myself kind of, but I'm more of a plotter. Like I write, I reread, I write, I reread. And when I start writing again, I go back like 2 pages, what I wrote yesterday, I re-edit, and then I dive in and I write
Mhm.
and I edit. So when I get a full manuscript done, it's pretty clean. I'm not saying it's perfect or that it doesn't have some proofing editor. I'm pretty clean though, but of course anybody's book has, errors. But I have a clean first draft versus somebody who just writes, and that's great for them if it works. I can't do that. Um, and then I like to go through and do a read through. If I had time, I would do a couple. I used to do a couple on the computer, and then I would print out and do a hard copy edit. No joke. But I don't really have that much time for that anymore before it goes to the editor. So
Mhm.
my books at the end are pretty clean.
Okay. And so after you've done with that, well, not really first draft, but kind of like a full manuscript, this goes out to the editor. And how many things change there actually?
I mean, it kind of depends on who your editor is. Yeah, I'll have a full manuscript, and then I have to go back and do a reread. Sometimes maybe I'll even do a couple of rereads, like a reread, then I get it to the editor, then when they get it back, depends on how pressed I am for time. And then I may do a reread completely again while with their changes. If you get an editor who's just proofing and line editing, that's what you're going to get. If you get one that, a separate one or the same one, and they do developmental, um, I don't get a lot of developmental edits. What you see, I mean, I'm not saying they aren't needed. I sort of roll with what I have, and I always have. I don't use beta readers, never, ever, ever. I never have. So what I write goes to an editor, and that's it. And then that's what you see. So, and somebody asked in one of your questions, what scenes do you have that aren't used? I don't have scenes that aren't used. I wish I did, because then I would have bonus material. And at some point I'm going to get bonus material, I swear. But I really don't have a lot of junk. I mean, I write, and then I wish I did have some scenes that I could scrap that I don't, and maybe I should seriously, but I don't. So if
Oh.
when you're editing yours, if you feel like you need a developmental, and I'll get a couple of little developmental tags, like she'll say, um, hey, here, I I think I don't if no, that's not even developmental. Like you mentioned something, but that's more, and then it doesn't match what you mentioned before. I don't know. I don't get a lot of that.
Hmm.
And I mean, maybe it's because I'm not asking for it and I don't want it. And I would argue with them if they gave it to me. So, but if you're with a traditional publisher, they will do a heavy developmental edit. Although Kensington didn't. I can tell you Carolina Rose, which To Seduce a Rogue, that is very largely what came out of my computer at that time.
So you even back then you were doing it the same way.
Yeah, and I think that's to Kensington, maybe they should have done a developmental edit and they really didn't, but that was their process. But
Hmm.
I think a lot of publishers will really give you a heavy dev edit, and then you're sitting there going back and forth with an editor for months too.
Right. And then when you were self-publishing, you hired an editor, right? To
Hmm.
work, but more like a line or copy or proofreader or something like that.
Right, right. And that just depends on your comfort level. So for this next series, if I do it with Dorsey, would be my own. That would kind of be me doing my own again, which is what I'm looking for. I need freedom. 2025 is freedom. No, I'm not saying I won't write. Maybe I'll even write faster. I don't know, but I don't want the deadlines. So this December book with Tall, Dark in December with the rake review is kind of my last commitment. And then I made myself not commit. So I'm going to go back to my thing. I get to pick the covers and yeah, and at that point you can do whatever you like as a writer. Do you need of course you want a proofreading and an edit, but do you want that developmental edit? Do you need it? I don't know.
I mean, if you are happy with your story, I guess, and you are publishing it and you are in charge, so and the readers like it eventually, it feels like you have maybe at this point, or maybe you always had it, this sort of intuition of how the story should go. And I would say I definitely like now that when I'm reading, I cannot turn off this thing in my head when I'm like noticing something. I'm like, this is the midpoint. I'm going like, this is 50%. This is 75%. Like I am trying to analyze for structure. And when I'm reading your books, I see the same structure. I see like you follow all the same things, but you kind of follow them intuitively, it seems.
Yeah, I do not plot like that. And I don't think about it. And if I did, I wouldn't be able to write. I have no idea what 50% of Three Sins is or 75. I write a scene and then I know what the next one is. And I try to do the point of view based on who's got the big gut clench. And that's it. You got to read, I'll send you To Seduce a Rogue. I would be very interested what you think because that was my first book. First book written in full. I think it's probably to the style of the books back then, a little bit, like I use that word overwritten. Like we wrote a lot more about, the clothes and the furnishings, and it was a little longer, but I bet you I'm still there. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
I would be
I'm gonna
interested
find
what
it.
you say.
I'm
It's
gonna
that. Oh,
find
I'll
it and
send it
see.
to you. It's there. It's on. But I'll send it to you because I would be just curious what you think. But and I read some people's older books and I get it. It's hard sometimes, but I still think it's me. You know.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. So you definitely kind of discovered your voice and your style, and you just stick to it, and it works. So why change?
Yeah, why change? And I write the books for myself. I do. I really do. I write the heroes I like. Occasionally I'll do a little something, but I really write for myself. And I think that but you got to know the genre really well. That's the thing. I read a
So yeah,
lot of books before.
you've read a lot, you picked it up, and now you kind of intuitively know what to do. And also I think it shows when an author loves their own characters and loves their own books, you can kind of see it jumping off the page at you. Yeah.
Yeah, I write very few for just a deadline, or because I had to. I mean, occasionally you have to do something and you feel like, oh gosh. And there are books I love the process more than others, and some the Three Sins was like pulling teeth, kind of. And so, but it's still, I think if you know the genre and you understand tropes, which I don't think about a lot either. I'm not a big like, oh, I'm going to cram these tropes in. But if you understand the genre and you understand the things that we have to have that are kind of a piece of it, And then how to play with the emotional piece on the page, I think is huge.
You've been in the business for a while, so you
Yeah.
sound quite confident in what you do. And my question would be, you know, the that little thing that annoys the new authors and occasionally the experienced ones as well, which is imposter syndrome. Does it ever touch you?
Yeah, of course, of course, of course. And I mean, if I have some confidence with this, I'm telling you that it was hard earned. And I certainly didn't, even when I came back into writing, and like did that the Tides of Desire. So that was kind of wrapping up that Kensington series with the brothers, and did the Lady is Trouble, and then that League of Lords series. I was just figuring out that I could write again. And I'm telling you, every review or every kind word or whatever meant a lot, because I certainly had no idea if I could write anymore. I didn't know if I could write. I didn't know if the books were good. I didn't know if the industry had changed a lot, or that I didn't even know if I could do it again. So of course, and if I have a little bit of confidence now, it's confidence in the way I do it and what's coming out, but it's not to say that I think every book is perfect or every choice is perfect, or that I couldn't use the developmental edit and they could really, or this or that. I think you just, who are you writing for and what are you doing? So I have confidence in that because I'm writing for myself mostly. But like with Three Sins, I'm telling you, I really thought that book, I was just like, I don't know. I just don't know about it. Like I did totally was worried. So, of course, but I think the more you write and then you get feedback, and if it's good feedback and you start to connect with readers, that you figure, okay, you know, but you get a 2 star. I just got a net galley. And I'm thinking, girl, don't read historical romance. I mean, the review is ridiculous. It's like, I mean, I get it, but it's like this is part of her all her comments. So it's just like, don't because we got our thing going and it's its own thing. But you know that happens, and then you have that little feeling in the pit of your belly, and you're like, you know.
Yeah, actually, I did want to talk about this part as well because you are very active on social media. You are active on Instagram and TikTok, and you are replying to all the reviews, you're reposting. So you do
Yeah.
read all of your reviews?
Okay. I will say now TikTok is fun for me and not a book world. I find all this crazy stuff out there, like I'm watching somebody on a sailboat during a hurricane. It is crazy to me that people are doing, like I was watching this Hollywood ghost tour. This guy was going through cemeteries in Hollywood for stars, which I'm a Golden Age of Hollywood fan. So TikTok to me is this crazy world of like all these people out there doing this stuff. I love it. And I'm a cat fosterer. So it's cats, whatever. So
Hmm.
TikTok, I think, is just, I don't think it's so much book stuff, and I've never figured out a real way to market. But Instagram is one I like and I feel comfortable, and I don't put any political, it is just book. And it's kind of this nice bookish, so I feel like I want to comment on, yes, when somebody is saying something great about the book, absolutely. One, I'm a reader first, for sure. And if anything happens with the writing and I stopped, I would still be reading. So I'm a reader first, always. So a lot of the Instagram stuff is readers. I'm doing the Saturday Step Back. That's as a reader, not as a writer. And all of that stuff. I love Instagram and the community there as a reader. But as a writer, for sure, I mean, most of the time, if somebody's doing a bad one, they don't tag me, so I don't see it. I just, if you're ever writing about an author, tag them because they don't want to miss it. But if it's bad, maybe don't tag them. I get that. So,
Hmm.
so everything, yeah, I'm very active because I feel like that's my community, and I'm so appreciative. Like I really am so appreciative. Like I am not at all where I think, oh gosh, that's just another review and they're this or they're that. I don't think that at all. Like I'm really appreciative, and I'm very involved with the community because this is my passion. I'm not writing just for money or whatever. Somebody that's like, oh yeah, I think romance is a lucrative place to write, so I'm going there. That's not my thing. I write it
Okay.
because I love it. I mean, I used to be at RWA. I had a friend, Jen Jones, who writes cozy mysteries. She was always my roommate. With well, Louisa James was my roommate for a while too. And I used to go to RWA and I would get this box of books, and they called me the book slut. Like I would mail a box of books home from RWA. I was like, any free book, like give me the books. So so I'm still very into the genre, and I think the social media piece and Instagram is that I'm just really I like it. I like it.
And yeah, it's good that you
But I
like
don't
it.
read all the reviews. You asked. I don't because those I'm reading because they're tagging me. It's good. But I will occasionally go on Amazon or Goodreads. Ugh. And like you read some stuff and you get that feeling in the pit of your stomach and you're like, So I try not to do that too much because it
Well,
makes you
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, I understand.
Because if somebody doesn't like it, fine. It's cool. Like I will tell you, I pick up some books. The writers are fabulously popular and the book is like the series and it is not for me and I don't get it, and I could list them right now. Two are in my head, two writers, but that's I feel like that's conflict of interest as a writer. I would never. And then that's me as a reader. It's not they don't I don't get it. Not my thing.
That's right. And actually, I mean, it's good that you like hanging out on Instagram and talking to your readers, because I can tell you as a reader that it totally works in terms of being your fan and wanting to read your books, because I have a ton of romances on my TBR, and I think anybody would much faster pick up a book from a writer or an author that would reply, that would engage. And it would be just so much nicer to read that book and discuss with the author, discuss with other people. And I honestly, that's one of the most important criteria for me right now. If I can pick up a book from an author and then I can talk to them about it after, that's what I'm going to read.
Well, and I mean, I think it goes, and there's nothing wrong. I don't want to sound this to sound judgmental. I'm a Virgo, we're judgy. But is that I think it's a difference between are you trying to sell a book or are you trying to create art and put it out there? Like I'm part of this community. So I'm part of the romance community. That's why I do all this. That's part of why I'm in there doing this. It's not just to sell a book. I want readers. I don't care so much, and this makes me a horrible business person. It's not the financial piece; it's the readers. I want new readers. I want new readers, and I want people to find Xander McCauley and Tobias and Noah Garrett. People go find Noah Garrett, and I want to find those characters and talk about like new books with people. That's my thing out there. So.
Right. Yeah. And yes, actually, about that, I had Anna Bradley on the podcast like a few weeks ago, and she also has like a ton of series already out. So she's been writing for a while. And I'll ask you the same thing I asked her. So after so many series that you've done already, is it hard to come up with like fresh stuff, stories, characters?
Nope. You
Nope.
know what? That used to be, I can remember I did this first, you sold your first book. It was like this thing at RWA and Terry Brisbane was in it. Me, Meg Cabot, because I used to pal around with her a little bit, but I think she had books out already. Somebody else, but I know Terry Brisbane. And I remember getting that question and thinking, wow, is that going to be a problem? Even though I think I was already writing the second book or something. But now, and I can tell you, and if you're ever worried about that, it's not for me, and I don't think for most people it is. But I think you can, like Anna Bradley, maybe she gets to a point where she's a little bit sick of something or she's writing a series and she's like, I think for my sanity or happiness, I need to start a new series or so, that's totally. But the reason it's not a problem for me is because I start with the hero. It is all about the hero for me. In fact, if you look at my books, which is funny, like talking about the developmental edit, I think some developmental editors, and this may be old school, said start with the heroine's point of view. I never start with the heroine's point of view. ever. I don't think I ever have. I'm trying to think. I never do, ever. So I start with the hero. He's it for me. And I'm not saying the heroine's not important. And I write independent women and blah blah blah, but the hero is kind of the guy for me. So once I get him and I'm excited about him, the rest kind of falls into place. It's that person. Once I'm excited about him, the story part just falls into place somehow.
And you
I
never
hope.
run out of the interesting guy types, like different personalities.
Well, now I'm kind of into the rookery guys, so I don't know if I'm going to need to shake it up or it's going to get, I don't know. We'll have to see. I just got sick of Dukes and the whole, like, you know what I mean?
I get it.
But somebody just said to me I don't know who it was, and they were like, and when said I might write Dorsey and the sisters, and whoever it was, I don't think it was you, but said, well, it'll be great to have the reverse where she's low class and the guy is high class. And I've had that, like Scandalous Vixen, but maybe I haven't done that as much. So, but these sisters would not be, yeah, they would be rookery kind of girls. So we'll
Oh,
see.
that's fun.
Yeah,
Do you
so
write
I don't know.
do you write pirates? I don't remember if I've seen pirates from you.
No.
I'm kind of into pirates lately. I've read Any Duke in a Storm by Emily Howard, and it was
Oh, I
so
gotta
amazing.
really? I gotta
Yeah,
try that. There's so many books. There's some
yeah.
pirates. Have you ever read Anne Stewart?
No.
Oh, wow. You gotta try one first. But be prepared because, the books that are a little older, sometimes the hero is very, dragging her by the hair a little bit alpha. Like there's a little bit of, but I think we have to be cognizant of when the book was written, but
Yeah.
she writes very good sexual chemistry, and I bet you she has a pirate. And she was a big name in the genre and a real character. She's around still, but I'm not talking about her like she's dead. But I sat next to her at a conference, and she was wearing some nun's outfit. She was a hoot.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, Anne Stewart, Anne Stewart. You can't miss
Yeah, I
her. There's a
think
ton of books.
I think I've heard of her, but not really haven't read yet because yeah, I mean, there's so many
Very
great
big one.
like writers that write now, and then there's also the older ones, and I cannot choose always between
No,
everything I want to write.
yeah, she was really big. And she's still publishing some things, but she's more like, I don't, was it a mystery type thing or something? But yeah, she was big, and her chemistry, her heroes are like, yeah. So you got to
Okay,
try it. I'm
yeah,
sure she has. I kind of feel like maybe she's got a pirate somewhere in there.
I'm sold definitely. Sexual chemistry, any chemistry, that's all I want to read. Okay, that sounds amazing. Okay, so since this podcast is for starting out writers, so new writers who trying to write or publish, is there any piece of advice that you would want to give, or maybe that you would give yourself when you were starting out?
Yes. And we sort of talked about this at the beginning. I think I used to get advice that I was too young or headstrong or immature or whatever to pay attention to or take. But I think the biggest thing that's worked for me, if there's been a glimmer of things sort of happening and kind of catching readers and finding my footing, was just sticking with the writing and sticking with the books. And maybe, sure, looking at what's working for you and going in that direction, but just writing. And I think getting the books and then having the problem of, I was just talking with another writer about this yesterday, you don't need to worry so much about the marketing and some of that. I mean, you want to you totally want to have a product that is good, a great cover. If you're starting out a website, your social media, maybe the branding is tight, all of those things. But the problem is more when you have the books and then you're worried about plugging all that in because you can't build it all at once. You're not going to start a newsletter with 15,000 or 5,000 or even 2,000 solid, good subscribers. You've got to start with the books, and everything else is interwoven. The newsletter, getting Instagram reviews, or people on your ARC team, or whatever. So I think the biggest thing at the beginning is just to write and get those books. and then start figuring out some of the ways you want to to market and what markets the best. I mean, and you can market new books, and if you only have one, but advertising dollars, all of that works better and to your benefit if you have a series. So, unless you're a standalone writer, if you're writing like women's fiction or something, that's different, but multiple books. So, putting a lot of money into advertising and things like that when you don't have a lot of books. And then there's that fear, okay, well, then I'm going to have a backlist. But yes, and a backlist is good. So I think my young self and any new writer, I would just say, don't. And this was a successful agent who I had at my kind of main agent, and she said, don't do to write to trend. And but you do need to write what's, of course, being paying attention to what's marketable, but trends, what's happening right now. If you started writing to a trend solely to that, by the time you write the book and get it out there, the trend could be over.
Yeah.
And unless it's one that has solidly lasted for 20 years in this genre. So I think the biggest thing is just to write and kind of have some confidence in what you're doing and get it on the page. There's a book called Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott,
Hmm.
if you've ever read it. And she has a chapter called, I think, Shitty First Drafts. So the thing is just to get that shitty first draft, get it on the page if that's what works. And because it's very hard to edit a blank page, and be sort of true to yourself and feel that confidence. And of course you're going to feel like an imposter, but I think writing is a big thing. Get the book out, and maybe don't worry too much about the trends or trying to emulate another writer. Like if you can be influenced heavily, and I'm certainly been influenced heavily by writers, but you want to have your own voice.
I do think it's a very useful advice because when you're just starting out, especially now, we know that everybody can self publish if they want to. But then when you start going into that, like me, for example, I started looking into different resources. And what you get is a ton of seminars, websites, coaches that kind of just tell you what you should be doing. And you feel like there's so many things and you don't know
Yeah.
where to start, what to do. And you kind of forget that the main focus of this should be on the writing. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think paying attention to craft, like I read a lot of craft books. You mentioned one at the beginning, Goal Motivation and whatever it is. That's a famous one. There's a ton of them. And I think that's great. You take what you can and what you want for your process. I will tell you that I did not know what the word trope truly meant until about 3 years ago. And that
Oh.
was after many, many years of writing and books. And that was like a trope. Oh, okay. Yeah, I've been writing Second Chance my whole life, and I didn't really. So I don't know if I'm in a hole or blinders, but I think you want some of that to factor in, but you also read On Writing by Stephen King. Have you read that?
No, but I got it recommended by a ton of authors, so I have it on my list.
Yeah, I mean, he's an intuitive, I think, and it's kind of that way. You got to just write. He said he had a railroad spike that stuck out of the wall that he had, put in the wall, and he put rejection slips. He would, bang them on there so it like just punched through. He said he had so many that they were falling off the railroad spike, which is like this long, and on the floor. And he was going to quit. And his wife, I don't know if they were married then, but she said, "No, you're not, and I doubt that he was sitting there angsting over having an MFA, which he did not, I don't think, and making crafting this gem. I don't. I think. I mean, I'll tell you another, and then I'll shut up. I when I first started writing with Kensington, I have this kind of unusual sentence structure. You mentioned it. I don't even know what that means. But I used to have my editor, she put a post it on the manuscript when I got it back from the editor, that first book. And she said, unusual sentence structure, don't edit. And she was putting that to the editor. And I know that these sentences that come out in my head, they're they work for a lot of readers, but I do get sometimes it's people English as a second language, and that bad on me that they're kind of like, oh, there is something complicated and not even, I think, grammatically correct. But it's what comes out of my head, and so I go with it.
Yeah, yeah, and
And I would
actually,
never let an editor change my sentences.
okay.
No, I'm not gonna do it. I mean, if it's completely, a disaster, I will for a few during there. But the way I write, I'm not. And I think about it sometimes because also write these really, I think, short, incomplete sentences. And I know that
Yes.
I do get that comment sometimes, but I'm not changing it because if I got it from every single review, I would try to work with it, but it just comes in occasionally. So I'm like, what you gonna do?
Yeah, I actually was just about to say that because this is like one thing is the complex sentences, which a lot of historical romance authors do, because this is basically, I would imagine this is how they talk, so that's fine. But
Yeah,
when I
maybe.
notice the incomplete ones, you often don't have a subject in a sentence. And I noticed twice. It doesn't bother me. I actually sometimes do that as well. When I want to emphasize something, just write it in a couple of sentences. But then I was like, "Whoa, that happens a lot. It's just a part of your voice now, and it actually, I mean, maybe it bothers someone. Doesn't bother me." But yeah, I mean, it's interesting that like this is the way you write, and you wouldn't let anybody change that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that though, if I was going back with a traditional publisher and I had an agent first who maybe was like, okay, we're going to have to do a really hard developmental edit or two, and then you go to a publisher and the editor wants to do it. If you're going to sell them the book, you have to do it. I mean, that would be the agreement. I'm not saying I would never do it again, but I'm not sure one, I see the value. And right now, I'm not sure I see the value. Um, and also the time commitment. I don't know. If I was starting my career, maybe I would do it again. But yeah, the reviews are largely good, and also I do really well for whatever that means on the contest circuit. There are only about five now that are left that I do. Most are I never enter any contest that is judged by other writers, and I would never judge. I think that's a conflict of interest. So it's writers, it's readers, booksellers, or librarians. Holt
Mhm.
Medallion's one, been around, the biggest in our genre that have won it or finaled. It's on their website. So there are a couple left. Reader's Choice, which actually that first book, Carolina Rose, it actually got nominated for Holt and for the National Reader's Choice, and Tides of Passion won Reader's Choice, which was big then. Um, so I think I do okay on the contest circuit, and I think I do okay with reviews. If a grammarian's reading it and they're like reading it for grammar versus the emotion, maybe it would bug them, but then probably don't read me. That might be my advice
I
because I
see.
might bug you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's totally a personal thing, and if most of the readers are okay with it, I'm totally okay with it. Like, I feel like you might be influencing me to write like that as well. I'm not copying, but like I'm trying to just think the shorter sentence might actually sound better. Yeah, I think I wanted to mention if
Well,
you
you
read,
want to vary your sentences. You know that, right?
yeah, of
Like you
course, yeah.
always want to, yeah. So you never want, like, that's one thing, any craft, and I may vary it in a way that is screwy, but yeah, you want to have long, short. And I do think about that sometimes. Like I do. But I think it's more for impact. And look at
Hmm.
this. We're writing fantasy. I mean, it's not fantasy, but romance is fantasy. The man is a dream. The woman is, it's perfect, it's true love, it's all these things we don't sometimes have, or that in this crazy world. So we're writing fantasy. I think we're trying to get to the heart of it. And if that is playing with the grammar a little bit, or even like Tessa Dare's, and I'm telling you, I just admire her. It's crazy admiration. But I think hers are a little bit modern language, but it works. Mm.
Do
So
you read contemporary?
yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, if we're talking about like kind of outliers in terms of grammar and the type of sentences, I think I haven't read myself, but I've heard that Jessa Hastings, the Magnolia Park series, a lot of people love her style. A lot of people hate it so much because,
Ooh, will you email me that so I remember
yes,
like what?
I will show you. I
Okay.
think I've seen a couple of pages, and yeah, you can see that the writing style is a little choppy, kind of. But it might
Okay.
be
Okay. Yeah.
interesting just to look into it, right?
Ooh, I love it. Yeah, because I think, and I think I go back to Nora Roberts. I'm not saying I love everything that she's done, but I definitely was inspired or influenced by her, especially years ago. And like that Chesapeake series is good. It's brothers, and I don't know, she just got it to get you into the hero. But I think hers can be choppy, or at least like some emphasis on certain words and sentences in a way. Okay, well, I will try that. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
think that's your voice, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
this is her style and this is how she writes, and you can hate it or you can love it, but like if there's enough people that love it, then that's it, you're good.
yeah, like Julianne Long. Do you read Julianne Long?
Not yet. Also on the TBR.
Yeah, I love her, but she does something, and I cannot even tell you because I try when I read not, I try to be impacted like a reader, and I have this moment of, oh God, that's getting me, and that's when I do the bookmark on the page, and I
Mhm.
try to either think about like what it is when I go back as a writer, and so, but I try not to do that when I'm reading, or it, like you're saying, it's 50% and they've done this or whatever, but she does something like when she's comparing things. That is a very Julianne Long thing. And I only know that when I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a Julianne Longism. And I get it when I'm reading it, but then I can't even tell you what it is. But she has something that is very much to her voice
Mhm.
that she does repeatedly. And I can't remember exactly, but when I'm reading her, I'm like, oh, yeah, this is her.
I'm definitely gonna check her out. I know that her last couple of books were very liked by, well, everyone I follow, so I'm gonna check.
Yeah, started at the beginning of that, the Rogue Grand Thames on the Rogue thing or whatever, whatever it is.
I,
She has the hotel. And go back
mhm.
to, you got to start. It's not that, it's just like the Duchess stuff. If you know the characters, it's more enjoyable.
Of course,
Yeah,
yeah,
she's delightful. And she will comment if you read. She's
yeah.
delightful. No, she will. She's really nice.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I really like when that happens. So yeah, that it
Oh
makes me
no,
want to read
Julianne
it
Long
even
is,
more.
yeah, she's definitely one who will comment. And she's really seems very sweet.
Okay. Well, I took way more of your time
No,
than
it's
I
okay.
anticipated already.
It's okay.
Well, since we are doing this episode's supposed to come out in December, so we are in December.
Oh,
And in that case, let's talk about your latest book, which is from the Rake Review, right?
yes. So I am writing it right now, which when you this airs, it will be done. Yeah, I fly by the seat of my pants. I'm late for everything, including deadlines. So this is a group, the Brazen Bells. It's a Facebook readers group. I don't know if you're a
I
member,
might
but
be in it. I might be in it. I'm in a lot of groups, so
well,
not
me
sure.
too. It's horrible. I'm not a big Facebook fan. I mean, I do it because you have to. But anyway, it's a group of writers. There are 12 of us, and we decided to do this Brazen Bells series. And it's a little bit like, kind of the gossip column. And once a month, a rake is reviewed in this rake review column. And kind of, and every writer, Kate Bateman's in it, Shanna Galen, Courtney McCaskill, tons, Kara Maxwell, blah, 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 bunch of us, Tabitha Waite, Charlie Lane, and they write one Sadie Bosk, one a month, and I'm December. So I'm kind of at the close, which is a little bit of pressure, but we'll see how it works out. Whether she's the Belle is who it is revealed. But yeah, it's been really popular. The covers are cool. We did a calendar that was really popular.
I think I'm following a lot of authors, so I'm seeing like these covers. They all kind of on the same theme, and they're really nice.
Yeah, so a bunch of people got the calendar, which was pretty popular. That was a great, I think that was Tabitha Waite's idea originally. And, so it's been fun. And it's just a novella, longer novella, 40,000 words or so. So that's a little bit longer. Novella
Hmm.
sometimes is 20 to 30. So anyway, but yeah, so that one's coming out December 1st. So it'll be out by the time this rolls. Um, and then I think next year, like I said, I'm thinking about with the Three Sins, Dorsey at the end, kind of maybe starting a new series with him. So we'll see. With the real
Okay.
Rookery guys, which I sort of prefer, I think.
Did you announce it
Sarah
anywhere?
McLean, Sarah
Ma-
McLean.
I think
I
it's
think it's McLean.
McLean, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, she also does a lot of the Rookery guys, which I like.
I also one of the authors that I haven't tried yet. I have what do I have here? Bombshell on my shelf, but I haven't really had again because it's a physical. I have it. I want to read it. I never pick them up because they're paperbacks.
There's so many books and authors I'm overwhelmed with, and my Kindle is a mess. And I kind of hate that because I liked when I had the physical books and I could finish one and you either save it or recycle or whatever you do, use bookstore or whatever. But now my Kindle's a mess. And that doesn't make me feel good, that I have like 100 books and I can't see them all or
Yeah,
whatever.
that's annoying. I do something, I never actually look in my library. I found an app on the phone where I can have like a wheel where I put all of my books. So I did spend a lot of time doing that. So I put all the covers on that wheel and it's like a randomizer. So you click on it and it spins and then it's like, this is your next read.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I need something because my Kindle is not. I just having all those books in that library. I mean, maybe it works for somebody. I don't know. I need a tip, like how to. And of course, I'm constantly downloading not only books. My friend has a free one, and I'm like, oh, I want to try that, so I get it or I buy it, and then I do samples. Like if you tell me a book, I'll get a sample, and then I have the sample on my Kindle, so I remember.
Ah, okay.
It's
Well,
so much stuff.
samples is something that annoys me, so I never have samples. I only have a sample of one book now, which is Forget Me Not by Julie Soto, because I was asking my friends on Instagram whether they know a good second chance, which has a very complicated backstory. And
Mm.
because, yeah, what I'm writing now has kind of a very convoluted kind of backstory between the two people. And I needed to find a way how to describe it all in the first act so that it's not just like, this is how it happened. Look. So I asked if anybody knew a good book that handled it well. And yeah, somebody recommended the Forget Me Not. And I only downloaded the samples just to see exactly in the beginning what happens.
Was this contemporary? Now, the book you're working on, is it contemporary?
Yeah, I don't do
Yeah, you
historicals
said you
yet.
don't want to do historical. Okay, okay. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'll try to think of one that handles that well. I love Second Chance, by the way.
Yeah,
That's my
it's
favorite
my
trope.
exactly. It's my favorite, and I read the X Vows by Jessica Joyce. That one also did it very well. It did it in a prologue, but kind of in a way that prologue, nah, that didn't happen. Like I was very interested in it. So
Yeah, I write Second Chance so much that I have to stop myself. Like I think Ice Duchess, Jason Duke, Tides. I have to send you Tides of Love. It is Second Chance, like to die is Second Chance. Oh
I
my
might
God.
do I
I
have it? I might have it. Like I have a
well,
lot of
and
stuff that I don't even know.
yeah, that
Just
one's like really angsty, but it's, yeah, he's my favorite hero in that, but the brother, the next one, and I think that one's really hot too, Tides of Passion. I mean, Tides of Love is hot, but
I
Tides
have
of Passion.
Tides of Love. It's right here on my
Oh, okay.
Kindle. I got it. I got it.
Well, just
Yeah,
read like
yeah.
a chapter and maybe it'll give you an idea of the set, but it's second chance historical,
Now that I know that it's a
but
second chance, I'm
American historical.
definitely yeah, I'm
Oh, I
definitely reading
love
it as
second chance.
yeah, yeah. It's going into my research now because I forgot that it was a second chance.
Oh man, I love second chance. Well, good luck with that. It's good. Just write. Keep writing. It will all find you will find your readers and you'll find your place. But I think, like I was telling this writer yesterday that I was talking to, and she's newer also in historical. But I said, just kind of give yourself the grace to build this business that you want to build or build this kingdom or whatever it is, and to get the books out there and to give yourself that time because it doesn't happen super quickly
Yeah,
and it's a
yeah.
lot of work. Phew,
Yeah, I know. That is the thing with me. That's why I'm
it's
trying to
incredible.
optimize stuff just because well, I'm not 20 something, I'm 30 something.
You're young.
Yeah, I mean, I am young, but the thing is, I have no children yet. I'm anticipating like when I have children, it's gonna be way worse. So I kind
Yeah,
of want to finish that first one before then, for example, and then just I have a full time job, and for some reason I started a podcast, which also takes away my time.
of
So
course.
yeah, it's almost like my writing time is whatever I have left from all of the other things that I'm doing, and that's why I'm like I should make this smarter because if I just keep writing some very shitty first draft, I will have to rewrite a lot of it and it will take years and I don't want that. So we'll see.
Well, I was thinking today that if somebody asked me, when I was doing my corporate career and somebody asked me, I would say graphic designer, but now I don't even feel like writer is the right word because we're publishers. I just read this. We are not, so I didn't come up with it myself. We're not writers, we are publishers. I mean, I am working with cover designers and doing new covers for the DeWitt brothers. I don't know if you read those, but two of them are out and one's coming, but they're kind of out. They're cute. Just watch for it. It's sort of old school, but just temporary. But I'm working with the cover designers. We're working with editors. We're doing social media, whether you have a personal assistant or somebody to help you a little bit, whatever. We're running ads. We're promotional. I mean, I can tell you that writing is not the majority of what I do
Hmm.
by far. I mean, now because it's managing that backlist and managing the releases and managing everything. So, yeah. And then when you have children and a family, I only have one son. I can't, and he's 17. So I can't imagine like young children. I don't know. But I did it with a full-time job, at least for a few years before I kind of retired from that. And it's tough. I
Yeah,
feel
and
like I
I
could do it
mean, I
hours
know
a
that
day.
a lot of people are doing it, so it's totally like I shouldn't be complaining much. I like a lot of people are doing it, but just yeah, I'm just seeing how it goes. I gave myself a deadline, and I'm not gonna be too stressed about it, but I'm just gonna try to make it work. And I'm putting some stuff on threads at the end of each day just to make sure I did something. And then yeah, let's see.
Threads, I know I'm on it, but I haven't really used it yet. I mean, I do a little bit. Occasionally I'll repost something, but I haven't figured because you only have time for so much.
Exactly.
Oh.
It's a lot of things. And then so now that I haven't used TikTok before. Now I have to use it because I put out the clips for the podcast. So then I'm also looking at others and stuff. And all of it takes a lot of time. So threads, I'm also on threads because of the podcast, not just because I like it much. But it's fun. Sometimes there are nice things that people are saying. So
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I'm there and I need to do more. I'll try if you tag me, I'll try to or kick me always and say, "Hey, repost this on Threads." But TikTok I will see because I do that. But that TikTok's my fun. I that place is so wacky.
I
I
know.
never know what's gonna pop. It's like you pull it up and you're like, "Oh, this is happening in the world." I get all the I just it's something else. I'm
Yeah.
enjoying it in a weird way right now, but nothing. It's really not much for the book stuff.
Yeah,
It's all this other stuff though.
it's a little crazy. I know. The only place I'm not on is Facebook. I mean, I am on Facebook, but with my personal account, so not the podcast, not the bookish, not anything. So I might be replying to some of the posts and stuff, and you might not know that's me. But yeah,
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I don't. Well, you can always tell me. So, because everybody with their names, and then people have pen names, which I don't. So all of that it's crazy. Like I was talking to this writer yesterday, and she's like, "Oh," I'm like, "Is this your real name?" And she's like, "Oh no, this is my." And I can't
yeah, yeah,
even remember. But
yeah.
but
I
yeah,
have
Facebook
to.
is the time suck too.
Yeah, I know. I have to have a pen name because my actual last name is unpronounceable, and people will be like, "What is the? Who's this author?" So no, I'm having a pen name, but I was lazy to create another account on Facebook. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh no, this was great. It was great.
I feel like I've missed so many questions and they just all flew out of my head. But if
Oh,
I ask everything, it will take 3 hours. So I ask maybe for like an open window to contact you again, maybe to have another
oh
episode.
no, yeah, 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 because you're not doing until December.
No, I mean like later, just later at
Okay,
any
yeah,
point. Honestly, like
anytime.
if you have a new book and you want to talk about it, I'm open just to promote a book or something, or to talk about a new project or whatever you
Yeah,
want
when
to
you're
do.
doing your 2025 calendar, if you have spots or you want to talk again, or if you wanted to get like I did a podcast not too long ago and it was with a few of the authors from the Rake Review, or you just wanted to get a couple like, I've got some friends and we wanted to get like three authors to talk, like if you wanted to talk about tropes or do a really drill down on historical or something, we could do that. Would be fun too.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
totally,
yeah, that's totally sounds like fun. I'm always looking for new guests, and I'm always looking for historical guests as well because I don't have that many. Even though no, I have just next month I have two new to me historical authors, Eliana Pierce and Olivia Fleur. So that's
yep.
going to be fun.
That's cool. Yeah, Eliana, I talked to her pretty often. You've got to send me the one you're talking about, though, the one with the choppy sentences.
Yes, I will. I
It's
will
steamy
definitely
though,
send that.
right?
Oh, I'm pretty sure it is.
'Cause I don't read.
I
I
think
mean,
it's I think it's described as some sort of Gossip Girl-ish, but in UK. And
oh, okay,
so
cool.
there's lots of drama, lots of toxic people, and I don't know, should be fun.
Okay, that's cool. Well, I'm totally read contemporary. I just don't read a lot of sweet, and I mean, it's fine. I think that's great. They're out there. It's just not my thing.
Yeah, yeah, I
So,
know. I read some. If it's my favorite author and they write both, I don't care. I will read it. And I'm now listening to a sweet one, which is okay. I don't like to say sweet. Actually, is it supposed to be Closed Door,
yeah,
Fade to
that's
Black,
not, it's a
something like that?
stupid word. I don't know what to
Yeah,
say for it. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think it's Closed Door. It's a
closed door. Yeah, that's better.
Leah Brunner. I'm not sure how you say it. So she writes like a very nice. They are closed door, but they are. I don't know. There was a scene with like breastfeeding and her boob out and conversation about it, and it didn't seem like something that would not have an open door later. But yeah,
Yes. Okay. Okay. And that's so there's so many books and so little time that you kind of have to. So that's one place I draw the line just because then I don't have to worry. If somebody
yeah.
says, oh, this book is so great, but it's that, I just don't add it to my TBR because it's overflowing anyway. It's crazy.
Oh, you're just like all of us, just a
I
reader
know.
who has a
No, I
giant
know.
TBR.
Yeah, that my Kindle makes me nuts actually. And there's a something that's not satisfying about it, the way having a book in your hand is satisfying, but
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, I can
exactly.
take 5 books with me anywhere, or 10 books or 20 or whatever. So I get it.
Okay, so can you tell me your website, your handles, how to find you so that the readers and listeners can find you?
Yeah, so it's tracy-sumner.com. I used to have tracysumner.com, but then like when my website was down for a few years and then I tried to get it back. They have these pirates that buy internet domains, and then when you try to buy it back, if you've let it slip away, they charge you a ton. Yeah, that's fun.
Oh,
So somebody owns it, but I don't anymore. So it's tracy-sumner.com. And then a good way to follow is on Amazon. I always say that because believe it or not, they do not, you probably follow a bunch of your writers you like. They don't spam you with anything. So I follow a bunch of people, then that way I want to know when their new release is coming out. I don't even think they send you pre-orders. So you don't get any spam. So Amazon's always a good place to follow writers that you like. And I do that myself. Um, Instagram, I'm at Tracy Sumner Romance. And I think I'm the same on TikTok, but it has dashes like Tracy Dat or underscore Sumner underscore
mm-hmm.
romance.
I will
And
check.
then Threads, I don't even know what Threads is, but I'm out there, but I don't do a ton. But I have a readers group, the Contrary Countesses, and that is kind of fun. And you can find it on my website, and it has the Brazen Bells, which is the group with all those other writers. Both of
Mm-hmm.
those links, and if somebody goes to my website, Chasing the Duke is my reader magnet. So if they sign up for my newsletter, and that is my favorite novella that I've ever written, and it is big time second chance.
Okay, yeah, I should check that out as well. I'm
Oh,
pretty
I
sure I
love
have it.
it.
I'm pretty sure I have it.
It's a quickie,
Okay.
I mean, it's a quick read, but yeah, and Ice Duchess is second chance too. I can't get away from second chance.
I know. Ice Duchess is one of my favorites, and I really,
Oh,
really, I keep forgetting that it's a novella because to me it's like a full book, and I'm
oh, you got to try
like,
Chasing the Duke. I love that one, and I just reread it because Tall Dark in December is his brother. Because I was like, I
oh,
wanted Chasing the Duke is just out there floating with this Duke of Mercer, so I'm pulling him in, and it's a long lost brother, and he's American hero.
okay, that sounds amazing. All right, thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you too.
Thank
Yes,
you
thank you for
for
supporting historical romance.
always, always. You cannot take it
Oh,
away from my cold dead hands. Um, thank you for all the advice. I feel like I've learned a ton, but I still have a million questions. So I'm gonna beg you for another episode sometime later.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. No, totally great.
okay, have a great day, and thanks again for coming.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
If you like what you hear so far, please consider subscribing and tune in for the next episode. If you have burning questions about writing you'd like to have answered, head to my Instagram page at kkalbabooks and leave me a message. Or use my email k.k.alba.books@gmail.com. If you'd like your favorite author to answer your question on my show, again, head to my Instagram or email me to let me know which author you'd like me to invite, and I'll try to get over my anxiety and do it. On the other hand, if you're an author who's published at least one book, traditional or indie, and you'd like to become a guest, well, you know what to do by now. Message me and let's get to know each other.